Welcome to Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tachi. I will be your host for this segment, this program. We use as a vehicle to share information with you about what's going on in and around the town of Abington and beyond. Our conversation today will be focused on the Old Colony Planning Council. We're going to learn about what they do and what they are up to as of late, how they've been operating during COVID-19. Joining us right now is the Executive Director, Mary Waldron. Mary, welcome to the program.
Kevin, thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.
If you could tell us, for folks who may not know what the Old Colony Planning Council is and who its members are, just give us a little background for the folks who are just tuning in.
No, terrific. Thank you. We are kind of an unknown commodity here, but our local planners and transportation folks know all about us. We are a regional planning agency. We are one of 13 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We represent 17 communities from Easton, Avon, all the way to the Plymouth border, kind of like a swath, if you will, right under kind of the 128 belt. And each are within a very unique in their various, statements in terms of they're from a city like the city of Brockton to a small town like the town of Avon, which has like maybe 5,000 residents. So we as a regional planning agency have various legislative duties, including working with our communities on regional aspects. So, right, water, roads, air, just don't stop at a particular community's border. Hence, there's the need to really open up and be a convener of discussions, but be also a convener of applying for grant funding or transportation matters where 128 kind of cuts down through, but there's also Route 3 and Route 44, but also Route 58 and 18, and I could go on and on. So we really serve as a convener, but we also serve as a kind of a supplement. Many of the communities that we have do not have a planner or an economic development director. You have town planners or you have town administrators who are kind of the chief bottle washer, if you will, and trying to deal with so many different things. And so we feel that we're an extension of our 17 communities.
During the past, we're going on a year now, we have had to endure something that none of us ever could foresee, and that is a pandemic, a global pandemic. How has business differed? How has your operations differed as an organization during COVID-19?
I think the fact that we're talking about COVID-19, 12 months after is still something that we never envisioned. I am extremely lucky to have extraordinary staff who are resilient themselves, but who are also innovative. When COVID started, our biggest challenge was communicating just within ourselves, but also with our communities. So we developed a survey back in, it was more like March, end of March, early April. And we asked our communities a short survey about what your needs are, tell us. And that helped us guide us in terms of how we reinvented ourselves and how we pivoted. So one of the things, we started a newsletter. We have over 500 stakeholders within Southeastern Mass who subscribe to our newsletter, and we're informing them about the latest news in terms of not only COVID, but also grant opportunities as a result of COVID. We played a very strong role in terms of the shared street program that was offered by the state. So like when you go into either Brockton or a couple of other communities where they took away those parking spaces to allow those restaurants and other vendors to go into the street so they can conduct business in a very safe manner. We held a webinar and invited conversations to happen. But I think most importantly, we really did go to our community. So while we may not be able to be meeting in person, we set up individual 17 individual meetings, Zoom meetings like we're doing today with our stakeholders in those communities to say, this is what our survey found. This is what was said, where are you now? And it kind of goes back to basic. It's really developing those relationships with the various people within the communities and just asking them, what are you hearing? What are your issues? What can we help with? And more importantly, not to give false, impressions that we can do everything for them either. But we, just like every other organization, we worked remotely, and we're continue to work remotely. So I have 18 staff members here in the organization. They come from all over the area. One is in New Hampshire, so he's stuck up there. But how do we get ourselves be very productive? And we did. And so we had to change. We have Zoom and other virtual ways of communicating. We changed our ways of our software. So we have Office 365. So many of the communities who may or may not have that, but that allowed us to have a Teams meeting. And again, having us be able to communicate much more efficiently and effectively. That allowed also for the staff who were working remotely to get their documents in the cloud. And I know this kind of talks maybe a little bit, to technology, but that technology is like everything. And some communities have that ability and some don't. And so we're kind of in that mode right now of, now that we're kind of feel that we're up and running in a way that we can communicate internally, we're now in the process of continuing to build that relationship with our 17 communities to assist them.
Knowing that COVID-19 actually had an adverse effect on transportation, and knowing that that's an area that your organization focuses on, and the committees and groups that meet to discuss the needs, because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, your organization helps the overall transportation plan as well, the state puts together moving forward. So how did you have to do things differently, or how did you have to tackle any of your approaches, traffic studies, knowing that there was a difference in how we travel because many people were working from home?
Yeah, it's that really is a one of, I think, the hardest part, but I feel that we've really made some great accomplishments. But that comes with having some partners with Mass DOT, Brockton Area Transit, GATRA, right, in terms of their expansion, in terms of opening up some opportunities. Obviously the MBTA and many of the transportation saw a decline in their ridership. That ridership seems to have been increasing as well, and some of it is right. Everybody wants to be in a safe environment, so Brockton Area Transit and others and Mass, the MBTA, really have done a yeoman's job in terms of making those modes of transportation to be effective. Working on bike trails, people, my understanding is from my staff is that bikes would be like flying off the racks, because many people chose to say that if they're going to do anything, particularly during the warm month, that they're going to take a bike. And so that piece, and we have a very strong network of people who are working on biking and having that be a mode, and making sure that the roads have a bike lane so that they're safe in terms of their ridership. And on top of that, people also are walking more. I bumped into somebody here in the downtown who walks 4 miles one way to get to his job on the west side of the city. And so I asked him, I said, have you thought about taking the Brockton Area Transit? And his concern was a little bit of some of the safety but anyway, but my point is that people are walking, so we need to make sure sidewalks, pedestrian. So the transportation department has been, Carly Kilmer, who's been going to be, I think he said in March, he'll be 25 years here with this organization, just renowned. He's like the E.F. Hutton of transportation in Massachusetts, and he's right here in our office, taking Charlie's expertise and his knowledge and working with our communities. So a place that's more dense, like City of Brockton, and helping them and keeping an eye out for funding and grant funding and any kind of funding that could help with either crosswalks and the such. But it's also then working with the other communities like the town of Avon. And again, some of that is really developing. Charlie has the faith or people have faith in him and his expertise, but knowing to go to him, there's an issue, whether it's Reservoir Street in Avon or whether it's in Hanover, the corridor study that we recently did. Representative DeCoste had reached out recently, and that had been we did a webinar, and that's posted on the town's website. That information is so critical. So back to the transportation, the ridership. So we participate and have a very strong relationship with Brockton Area Transit and Mike Lambert, who's the administrator, and working with the communities. And again, it's the partnership that we have with them. And if they have something, they developed a discounted ridership for the residents of Brockton, so that they are not paying the high pass, the ridership cost. And our offer is to help get it out to the 500 stakeholders on our newsletter. So, communication is really, really, really critical. And hence, I think, the work that you're doing, Kevin, and reaching out through not only cable, but also through radio and through all other venues is critical, that we help assist in getting that word out.
Again, if you are just tuned in, we are speaking with Mary Waldron. She's the executive director of the Old Colony Planning Council, serving 17 communities. Brockton, of course, kind of the anchor pin. I think that's where one of their main locations are. And I know they also serve Plymouth, the Plymouth area, and in and around the South Shore. And we're talking about Old Colony planning, doing a little catch up with her, and also a little look forward. Looking at the new year, here we are, we're cruising into the second month of 2021. What is on the horizon for Old Colony Planning Council, knowing that hopefully in the next 4 to 6 months, we may shed everything that we've been dealing with a global pandemic?
Well, it's a great segue, Kevin. This year we'll be unveiling a new website, a new logo, mission statement, a vision statement. I can give you a little bit of a lead, and I think it can help answer even the question about how, what's the future. And so I start off with our mission at Old Colony Planning Council is we assist cities and towns in planning for present and future needs, utilizing our local knowledge, our technical expertise, and regional collaboration. So to the very question about what does the future hold, we don't know, right? We just found that out last year, is that we don't know what our future is. We do know with a vaccine that may help, alleviate some, but it's not going to cure it all. I think that we, as this future is going to be changing on a day-to-day, a week-to-week, a month-to-month, but we as Old Colony Planning Council, with staff that we have in place, and our council delegates, right? I have Christine Joy, who's a select board member from the town of Plimpton. She serves as the president of our council. Having her be a select board member and the president of our council is such a critical piece, because she's got her finger on the pulse. Dottie Fuginetti, who is a staff member, she's our economic recovery planner. She is a select board member in the town of Easton. So having, that's just 2 examples. I can give you 1,000 more, and whether it's someone on a planning board or what have you. So how do we plan for the future? The reality is we have to make sure that we're tuned into Board of Selectmen meetings and city council meetings and planning board meetings, and what sort of zoning changes. We have to be in tune with our Chamber of Commerce's. So the Plymouth area, Metro South, South Shore are great partners to us, but it's also going to make sure that we also are in tune with, the Campello Business Association, which is a small organization, or Pembroke Chamber, which is a smaller organization, but they have their own needs. And it sounds like a lot, and it is on some days when it all comes at you, but it's so critical that we are able to continue to have that dialogue, and then be able to pivot accordingly. So as we get down the line, in terms of looking at being resilient and being sustainable, and being equitable at the same time, in terms of all of what is going on in our world, and to not be in tune with Black and brown businesses and how they've struggled, and how do we are able to assist them and point them. And one of the things that Dottie was able to pull together was a business guide that we shared with all the communities, and we shared with planners. We put it out, shared with our chamber partners. And I think all of that is really pretty important, that we continue to keep on top of those things.
What are some of the important studies? I know that the OCPC does conduct a series of corridor studies, traffic studies. Are there any particular areas that OCPC is going to be looking at in depth this coming year? Anything that is top of the mind for you, or anything that you've done most recently that has been tackled?
Great questions, and the answer is yes across the board. One of the things that we, because it's federal funding, the Economic Development Administration we have an element that is unique to regional planning agencies. We have the Area Agency on Aging, which is federally funded, but we provide funding to Council on Aging's and nutrition programs and things of that sort. So David Klein, who is an Abington resident and is the administrator for the area agency, he just sent out a survey that there's something like 1,000 surveys have come back about the needs and what is needed. He needs to take those surveys, and the idea is not just take a survey and sit on it, take those surveys and really act upon it, and perhaps change policies or develop new programs depending upon where funding is. Charlie in the transportation department, currently Ray Garino is working on a climate change. And what is climate change and transportation? Well, the reality is modes of transportation. And they work closely with the Community Planning and Economic Development Group. So, it's a study that is just beginning and doing some outreach. And then we have an overall public participation. Back to what we started earlier, and that is, how are we reaching out? And we are right now looking at a software that could allow people to, at 3:00 in the morning, if they're up and they can't sleep, but yet they wanted to have their voice be heard, whether anonymous or not, but be able to go on a virtual map on our website and be able to post their comments and their interests and their concerns. So some of the reality is that we see the same old people showing up to town meetings or to planning board meetings or whatever, and their voice is, nope, we don't want housing, or no, we don't want this, and yes or no. We want to be able to make sure that it's very inclusive. That's something that we're working on this year. The municipal surveys is going to be revamped again. We're probably going to do that on an annual basis and seeing where the needs are. Unfortunately, there's not enough funding under the federal government or even the state government to fund all the needs of our communities. So the TIP is often referred to in under transportation, and it's a plan, and we're given only X amount of dollars, we the regional planning agencies, and what we need to be able to do is prioritize, and then we also want to make sure that we are being equitable in terms of meeting the needs across all of our 17 communities. There's never going to be enough money. But I think in the end, so there's the Joint Transportation Committee and the MPO, Old Colony Planning Council, MPO meetings, which are stakeholders from the federal government, from the state government, as well as local, to really have a robust discussion. Talk about ridership, talk about traffic studies, talk about, crash reports and things of that nature. I dream about that at night. but the impact, the fact that the dialogue is happening, I feel this dialogue is helping make our communities safer, because we're able then to be targeted and to help prioritize. And we do work with our legislative delegation, Senator Mike Brady and Claire Cronin, as well as everybody. I mean, we have all those from across the region, and develop that so they know what the needs are in case we do need some assistance through the transportation bond bill.
Again, if you're just tuning in, we are speaking with Mary Waldron, Executive Director of the Old Colony Planning Council. You a couple of times during your last explanation, you mentioned the federal government. How does the change in administration have an effect on your organization, whether it's funding wise or any business that you may do when you're putting together studies or any assistance for various projects?
So we do have a very large portion of our budget. 50% of Old Colony Planning's Council budget is transportation related. So our relationship with the federal government, the change of administrations, I can say, at least attest from my last year being on here, didn't affect anything. And I don't know how it may otherwise. I will say that through the Economic Development Administration, EDA, um, we have we are working strongly with our with I know town of Stoughton and the town of Plymouth both. We've been working with them on an application, and hopefully we can hear soon about that. It's targeting what is needed, and it all has to do with jobs for the Economic Development Administration. So I would say my hope is that it continues to be as it may. My hope is that it can be increased with some additional funding. Our communities are hurting. They really are, and just struggling to stay afloat. This year, I think everybody's been anticipating is going to be okay. I think it's next year, the year 2022, that many have cautioned many of us to say that may be the year that further layoffs and things of that nature. So whatever we can do to continue the dialogue, we have a very good relationship with Congressman Lynch's office. We have a very good relationship with Senator Markey's office through the local Jim Cantel. I'm going to say Jim. Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, Jim, for messing up your name, but I know Jim, and being a local guy and being engaged, has his pulse, and so I think that's to our benefit. So I can only hope for more funding to come, and we can definitely keep you posted on that.
We have a few minutes left in our segment, and in this particular portion, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe touch upon something that maybe we didn't, or that you feel is kind of essential to at least sharing with the folks who are tuned into this particular segment.
Kevin, thank you. I first want to start with the volunteers, and the volunteers are really the council board members. Like, they don't get compensated. They are not a full-time employees of us or the Old Colony Planning Council. They just truly care about their community. So we recently redid our bylaws. Lee Hartman, the planner in Plymouth, was extraordinarily helpful, like literally was brought a lot of history, but he was very helpful. Probably spent at least about good 10 hours with me and dividing that. That takes commitment and passion and knowing what work that we do. But I really do want to be able to, for all 17 communities, you have a delegate and you have an alternate. And we're actually just one person shy of one of our communities, but we're working strong on getting a representative. If you have the representative, then you have that voice. So just yesterday I had a conversation with Peter Spagone from East Bridgewater. Peter, a select board member, but he just became voted as a delegate to Old Colony Planning Council. I was on the phone with him for about an hour, and his energy and his passion, Mayor, we've got to do this and this has got to be done. And it was exciting to hear that. But again, it's a volunteer. He doesn't get paid for that. So I really want to acknowledge all of the delegates and alternates. There's 17 of them. And I do have every intention of visiting every community that we have. So that's one. The other part is really the staff. During COVID, what they did, I would be wrong if I started naming people, but really in terms of the communication and surveys and Zoom and all of that, they came together. It made us stronger as a team. And as we move forward, as we're excited about where we're going. And I will say that we've had some promotions of some of the staff. We had Bruce Hughes, who had stepped down, retired. Joanne Zigman is going to be taking his place as the economic development. So she's senior economic development and environmental planner. So her skill set are now being moved over, and just extraordinary in terms of what it works. So there's a whole host of people. Paul Chenard from the transportation department, as well as Sean Bailey and lots of different things, and if you don't have a chance to kind of hear all what we're talking about in this short segment, to go to our website, www.ocpcrpa.org. And as I said, website's going to change, and how we interface with our stakeholders will be changing, and we look forward to having more dialogue.
Mary, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank the efforts of not only your staff and the folks there. You mentioned a bunch of people besides Charlie Kilmer, Bruce Hughes, and I know other people. I know other members. You mentioned Peter Spagone. I know Dan Salvucci, who
Yes.
attends those meetings regularly, and I'm just a few. Joanne Zigman, who is somebody who's been very active in her community in Brockton and beyond. It's great to see that work like that it's coming together, even though we've had to endure, a pandemic, and it's great.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm very proud of this organization, and I'm proud to know where we take it over the next few years.
Well, we look forward to having many more conversations with you and members of your staff.
Thank you.
And that's all the time that we have here on Community Chat. We thank you very much for tuning in. Until next segment, have yourself a great day.